Okay, I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Book 1 in one of the best, if not the best, mystery series on the planet ever written of all time. And that is A Great Deliverance by Elizabeth George. It is book number 1 in the Inspector Linley and Inspector Havers mystery series. You know, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff here about this series and about this book in particular and about a few other things. We always start with the cover designs. I mean, I've got every Elizabeth George novel back here. They all have pretty similar cover designs, just, you know, bold type with a little bit of a image of something in English. These are British mysteries, so all the scenery on the covers is British, you know, in nature and tone and flavor and feel. So, you know, they're decent covers. I mean, they get the job done. They're nothing that blow me out of the water. The thing that I love about these books is I've got every single copy of my Elizabeth George Inspector Linley and Inspector Havers mysteries signed by the author. Every single one of them. I took them to a book signing that she had in Salt Lake City. I took every single one of them. A big bag of books. I had her sign them all. She was gracious enough that she signed every single one of them. That was awesome. And there's like 20 of them. So 20 of them. Always go meet your favorite authors, get your book signed. Because that's just cool. That's what we do here on this channel. The Inspector Linley. Oh, and not only that, but Elizabeth George, if you saw my top 10 favorite authors of all time video, she's on that video. You can go watch that video. Just type in my name, Brian Lee Durfee, top 10 favorite authors. The video will magically appear upon your YouTube, and you can watch it and you can see where she fits in my top 10. Just saying. Just saying. I love this series. I love this series. It was made into a TV show, BBC, British TV, I don't know. Oh, it's right here on the front. Now a mystery prison, it's one of those Masterpiece Theatre, BBC, PBS television mystery series. Maybe some of you have seen the Inspector Linley series. I don't know. I've seen them all. I've watched all the TV shows, and they follow the books fairly closely. They get rid of a lot of the main character. I mean, there's only, if you're going to compare the books to the TV show, we'll just do that real briefly here. The books have about 5 to 6 main characters. The TV show boils those characters down to just the 2 main characters, Inspector Linley and Inspector Havers. They get rid of kind of a lot of the other, like they get rid of the St. James and Helen, and they get rid of a lot of it. They get rid of a lot of the stuff, which is a drawback on the TV series that I didn't like. But the TV series is fine. Not as good as the books. So we spend the first 20 pages of this book. And it's interesting because the whole series is about Inspector Linley and Inspector Havers, but yet the first 20 pages of this book are told from the perspective of other policemen that know these two. And the other policemen are kind of describing, they're like, uh-oh, we've got this murder case, and Inspector Havers and Inspector Linley, it's their rotation, they're going to get assigned to this murder case together, and they're like, oh no, these are like the 2 most volatile inspectors we have, and they cause trouble wherever they go. They never get along with any of their partners, and now we're going to now they're going to be put together, and so these other characters are like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. That's the first 20 pages, right? And then we do get to meet the 2 main characters, Havers and Linley. And they are opposites. They are absolute polar opposites. Havers, Inspector Havers is a lady, and she's described as a little squat pig-headed bitch. And then Linley is described as this upper class, super good looking, just dude, right? And so they're both hated for opposite reasons. Inspector Linley, people think he's just so highbrow, and so he's like always right, and he's he's always so good looking and dashing, and whereas Havers is the opposite. She's just, a pig-headed bitch. Just a little squat, ugly, pig-headed bitch. And that's the two inspectors that we get, right? And so I don't normally read out of the books, but one of the reasons I love Elizabeth George novels is because they're all big, fat, juicy, epic, fantasy-sized books. I mean, most mystery novels are like 300 to 400 pages. I mean, her mystery novels are from 800 to 1,000 pages. I mean, they're very dense, involved mystery novels, and that's why I love them. And she writes and describes a lot of stuff. I mean, you're in the British Isles when you're reading these. I mean, because she describes everything, which puts a great atmosphere into the books. And I love the way she describes. There are two main characters are described perfectly. I mean, this is the description of Havers. This is a description of Inspector Havers, the woman. At 30 years old, Barbara Havers was a decidedly unattractive woman, but a woman who appeared to be doing everything possible to make herself so... that's it. Let me read that again. At 30 years old, Barbara Havers was a decidedly unattractive woman, but a woman who appeared to be doing everything possible to make it so. Fine, shiny hair the color of pine wood might have been suitably styled for the shape of her face, but instead she wore it cut bluntly at an unforgivable length, just below her ears, as if a too small bowl had been placed upon her head for a model. She used no makeup. Her heavy, unplucked eyebrows drew attention to the smallest of her eyes rather than the fine intelligence behind them. A thin mouth, never heightened in any way by color, was pressed permanently into a disapproving frown. The entire effect was that of a woman, stubby, sturdy, and entirely unapproachable. I mean, this is Elizabeth George, a female author, describing her main character as just kind of like this troll. But that's the way everybody sees her, and then she acts that way. And the reason I bring this description up is because it sets us up for disappointment in who she is. And that's a very good storytelling tool, because she is, just super brilliant, and she's not as unattractive as everybody says, or as she even thinks to herself, because she thinks that she is a troll. She just thinks it. And so as the story and all these novels progress, we get to see her change in a lot of ways. And you have to that's the thing about writing, is you have to set up characters in certain ways so that they can change. And a lot of people get pissed off at the beginning of books. They're like, oh, they just wrote a terrible female character, or that character's terrible, because of the way that the author originally approaches the character. And the reader needs to understand that the author knows what they're doing. The author knows that I am putting this out there so you will not like this person to begin with, or there will be things that bother you about this person, or you might even be bothered by the way I described the person. It might be offensive to you. But if you just pull through and understand that the author knows what they're doing, that the character can change, and that gives the character room to change and breathe. But a lot of people just, everything's about the physical appearance of women. No, it's not. It's a technique that authors use to put across a point. She does the same thing with Inspector Linley, but in the opposite way. Inspector Linley is described also. And this is the way he's described. Just as an objectionable person, but in a different way. So, Linley looked towards the house, revealing a face that bore the unmistakable stamp of aristocracy. It was a Greek sculptured sort of face, unaccountably timeless. He brushed his blonde hair back from his forehead, placed his champagne glass on a table nearby, and after exchanging a quip with one of his friends, came towards the house with his girlfriend at his side. I mean, we're setting up two people who are polar opposites to see what happens when they actually do get together. This is a great plot device. This is great. Let me see. There's one other thing I wanted to read here. Oh, it's more about Linley. This is why we don't like Linley to begin with. He if there was anyone in New Scotland Yard whom Havers hated more than she hated Linley, he was miraculous. He was a miraculous combination of every single thing that she thoroughly despised. Educated at Eton, a first in history of Oxford, a public school voice, a blood family tree that has roots somewhere just side of the Battle of Hastings, upper class, bright, and so damnably charming that he could charm every criminal into confession. This is class. This is class. I mean, if you know anything about the British people, class is a huge thing, especially back when this book was written, like 1988. I mean, class. We're dealing with class. We've got the lower class cop partnered with the higher class cop, and that's the basis of the beginning of this novel. The reason I'm spending so much time describing these two characters and who they see each other, and they don't like each other, and they know each other's reputations. They don't like each other. They don't want to be forced in together to go solve this murder, and the murder I'm going to talk about in a second. And there's other people that are involved. There's St. James, who is and Linley. One of the reasons that Havers hates Linley so much is there's this other cop named St. James, and Linley was in a driving drunk, and he crashed his car. And St. James, the other cop, was seriously crippled in that accident, and it just seems to Havers that Linley doesn't care that he hurt this other policeman. But St. James is one of our main characters also that runs through the series that's left out of the TV show, unfortunately. And his assistant Helen is actually Linley's beautiful girlfriend. Helen is so beautiful, and that's another we've got the crippled forensics cop St. James, who is partnered with Helen, who's this magnificently beautiful supermodel cop. And of course, the magnificently supermodel cop, Helen, is dating the magnificently supermodel investigator, Linley. And the reason I'm focusing on the physical characteristics so much is just because that is the part of the theme of a lot of these books and the journey that we go on with these two characters. I say you can read each one of these books as standalone novels, but you really got to start from the beginning and see how the relationship develops throughout the 20 or some odd books, from so contentious and so hateful of each other and so resentful of each other to something that is absolutely amazing, that they just come together slowly over time, over the period of a lot of books. That's why I like this series overall, is because these two characters, go through, as they solve their murder mysteries, they go through a lot of stuff. And I haven't even talked about the plot yet. And just to save time, I'm just going to read right off the back here of what the plot is, and then we'll be done with the book. To this day, the low, thin wail of an infant can be heard in Kelldale's lush green valleys. 300 years ago, as legend goes, the frightened Yorkshire villagers smothered a crying babe in Kelldale Abbey, where they'd hidden to escape the ravages of Cromwell raiders. So in other words, they were hiding in the abbey to escape the raiders. The baby was crying, so they killed it. Now, in Kelldale's pastoral web of old houses and older secrets comes Scotland Yard's Inspector Thomas Linley, the 8th Earl of Asherton. Along with the redoubtable Sergeant Barbara Havers, Linley has been sent to solve a savage murder that has stunned the peaceful countryside. For the fat, unlovely Robert Taze has been found in her best dressed, an axe in her lap, seated on the old stone barn beside her father's headless corpse. Her first and last words to the inspectors are, "I did it, and I'm not sorry." So what happens is, that's the murder that they get sent to solve. They go to solve the murder, and they find that the old lady is sitting there with the axe in her hand, and she's like, "I did it. I ain't sorry about it. I chopped his head off." So now that they don't even believe her, so then they got to solve the murder. Okay, so that's basically the plot of the thing. Oh my gosh. If you love character-driven stuff, there are no two better characters in the history of everything that I've read. And I've read 5,000 novels. There are no two better characters that I love watching, other than maybe Gus McCrae and Woodrow Call from the Lonesome Dove series. I think my second two favorite characters to watch interplay with each other. Well, there's also Kenzie and Gennaro from Dennis Lehane's. Well, there's a lot. But I'm just saying, Barbara Havers and Inspector Linley, I absolutely adore everything about the dialogue that goes on between them as they try to solve these murders, and the just interplay between them from book 1, A Great Deliverance, all the way through all the other 20 books that I've got back here. I hope I've stoked you enough to get these books. These are, and I read a lot, folks. I read a lot, and these are the top notch. This along with Dennis Lehane's Kenzie and Gennaro series and Michael Connelly's Harry Bosch. This is it. This is the series you got to be reading. Is the Inspector Linley, Barbara Havers novels. This was starting with A Great Deliverance. I give this 9.5 out of 10. It's a great opening to the series.